Hi guys, the Middle Maniac back again. In this video, I'm going to be listing off, in my opinion, the top 5 most underrated singers in metal. Before I get to my top 5, I do have a couple honorable mentions. First off is Blackie Lawless from the band Wasp. The band as a whole is kind of underrated, but Blackie Lawless is just an amazing vocalist, and he's not even like, I'm not saying he's not talented, but what I mean is that, what I'm trying to say is that he is not, I guess, in a way that unique of a vocalist in a way, considering that a lot of the way he sings, even though it's unusual for metal, it's actually quite. I mean, it's one of the more easier ways to. One of the easier kinds of vocals to sort of learn how to do. Um, He has sort of like I guess, he does sort of a combination of like a little bit more of the rough type vocals, like almost like thrashy type vocals, but then he can do a little bit more like the, not operatic, but very, what's the word for it? He could also do the very sort of clean, very, style vocals as well, like, but yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting how even though his vocal style is very unique from metal, it's actually one of the easiest to learn how to do. Um, but yeah, that's an honorable mention. Another honorable mention is uh, Brendan Small. Yeah, people might know him. Oh yeah, he's not a metal vocalist. He's a guy who created Metalocalypse, the TV show. Like, but he kind of is a metal vocalist, considering he sang for the Death Clock albums. He was the singer. He was the voice of the character Nathan Explosion, and of course, because Nathan Explosion was the singer of the band, of course, Brendan Small was a singer. Um, his sort of death metal vocal style is very unique in that it kind of changed a little bit over time. At first, particularly on the first Death Clock album, it was very like, it wasn't very good. Honestly, it was more like a raspy, whispering, spoken word type thing. Then later on, it got a little bit more refined, and by the time the third album came around, some really cool, very unique type of death metal vocals where they're kind of like the head, like the growlier type vocals, but also had a little bit of melody to them as well. A little bit of melody to the growls and stuff, which is kind of, is again, very unique. Um, but yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, I had at least 2 or 3 more honorable mentions. Another honorable mention. I'm trying to figure it out. I didn't list. I didn't put. I have a list of my main 5, but I completely forgot to put down the list of my honorable mentions. So, what's another honorable mention? I'm trying to just look for a reference here. Oh yeah, Neil Turbin, who was the original singer for the band Anthrax. Yeah, I actually prefer Neil Turbin over Joey Belladonna and the other guy. Even though they're good as well, but Neil Turbin is one of the most looked over vocalists. I mean, he, like, going back and listening to Fistful of Metal, their first Anthrax album, you could clearly tell he was influenced. Like, one of his vocalists he was influenced by was Rob Halford. I mean, I know he's just such a great metal vocalist, and he's just sort of ignored because, oh look, there's Joey Bonadonna. Let's focus on him. You know, screw whoever this other guy was. We don't really care. It's Joey Bonadonna over there. You know, that kind of thing. Kind of like with like Ripper Owens. A lot of people sort of ignore the Ripper Owens stuff in Judas Priest because, oh look, Rob Halford's over there. You know, we don't really care about Ripper Owens because Rob Halford. You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, he's just such a great vocalist and just so sort of ignored again for a very stupid reason. Um, but yeah, honorable mention, and there was at least one more honorable mention. What was it? Um, hmm. I honestly don't. Oh yeah, hold on. I completely forgot his name. That's why I kind of forgot it was on honorable mention. Where does it go? Oh yeah, Brian Ross, the singer of the band Blitzkrieg. It kind of like a mix of the more operatic style of heavy metal vocals and the more like mixed with the more almost Rob Halford-esque type vocals. Really, really awesome. All right, now actually to the top five. Sorry it took so long. I just had quite a few honorable mentions. Um, at number five is Tony Martin, who was at one point the singer of Black Sabbath. And honestly, in my opinion, he was the best singer Black Sabbath ever had. Ozzy, again, I've already said in a different video that in another video that I can't stand Ozzy's vocals. I think they're extremely annoying. And no matter what he's singing, whether it be Black Sabbath or his self-titled band or whatever. Dio, even though I love Dio's vocals, I don't think his vocal style was I don't think it fit very well. For the most part, for most of the albums, I don't think it fit very well for Black Sabbath. I think his vocal style was perfect in his own self-titled band. But yeah, Dio, good, but you know, his voice doesn't really fit Black Sabbath. Whereas Tony Martin, his vocals fit perfectly. I mean, just listen to the song, the title track of Forbidden, and tell me that those aren't just great vocals, you know? You know, once you listen to the title track of Forbidden, I mean, you'll be blown away. I guarantee it. But yeah, just an extremely underrated vocalist. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this person is known best for being the vocalist of this band. Oh, there's another vocalist. Oh, well, we don't care because look, this guy's over here. You know, that kind of thing. But yeah. At number four is an extremely underrated death metal vocalist, and that's Cam Lee, who was the original singer of the band Massacre. Who I really wish they at one point are able to get him back in the band, because this most recent singer for Massacre is, oh my god, he's just basically a George Fisher clone. Like, he sounds and looks exactly like George Fisher, or almost exactly like him. But yeah, Cam Lee though, oh wow. Like, listening, like, for those of you who don't know about the band Massacre or have never listened to their first album, From Beyond, go and listen to it. Like, buy it. Like, it's actually pretty easy to buy. It's on Amazon. I don't think it's that much. I don't think it costs that much. But buy it, listen to it, and just listen to the vocals. Cam Lee's vocals are so sinister. He can do these really cool, like, he could do the traditional, more of a growl, guttural vocals, but he could also do some of the more, like, he can do these really wraithy shrieks at times, too. I mean, and very unique ones at that. Like, and also when you least expect it, because when you listen to those, like, you're like, you're like, oh, he's doing the growls, and all of a sudden, and you're like, whoa, okay, I didn't expect that. But yeah, just a really underrated death metal vocalist. He's at number four. Yeah, Cam Lee is at number four. At number three is Brian Thomas from the band Halloween. Yeah, not to be confused with the band Halloween. The band Halloween. One of the best heavy metal vocalists from like the mid, who sort of started, you know, I guess who got a lot of, you know, notoriety around the mid '80s. His vocal style is actually pretty. I mean, the early stuff, like his vocal style on the early stuff, like their first three albums, for the most part, he sounds almost like, in a way, a power metal vocalist. I mean, yeah, he clearly is more influenced by the heavy metal stuff, but listening to the song, like, for example, listening to the song not the Candles from their fourth album, he really almost sounds like a power metal vocalist at times. But yeah, he's just so good. His voice is amazing. I mean, when I listen to like the older stuff and then comparing to the newer stuff, his voice hasn't really aged that badly at all. Like, his voice is actually pretty intact, which is amazing. Kind of like Steve Grimmett, how Steve Grimmett's voice is pretty much intact after all these years. That's how Brian Thomas is. But yeah, it's just an amazing vocalist. Can really hit those high notes when necessary, and can really do the more like gruff vocals at times in the later stuff as well. Um, but yeah, he just really makes the. He's basically like when I think of the voices of heavy metal, he's definitely now one of the ones I think of, alongside of course Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, voices like those. But he's just amazing. But yeah, Brian Thomas from the band Halloween is at number 3. At number 2 is Steve Grimmett from the band Grim Reaper, also nowadays known as Steve Grimmett's Grim Reaper. Um, just like what I said with Brian Thomas, Steve Grimmett's voice is still very much intact, and he sounds pretty much like he did back in the 80s, which is amazing. Um, he I think he might have had sort of influenced by Rob Halford. Like a lot of these singers from the '80s were influenced by Rob Halford um, for their vocal style, and Steve Grimmett also. Not only that, like another thing awesome about Steve Grimmett is that unlike a lot of metal vocalists, especially back in the day, he knew where, like, he didn't go like high vocals all the time, every single song, every single like moment of every single song. No, he reserved those high moments. He knows. He knows. I think even from the beginning he knew and he knows when to do those high vocals at what point in a song. I don't know. He's like one of those vocalists that doesn't, just go all out even when not necessary. I like how I really respect how he basically knows when to do the high vocals and when not to. But yeah, I mean, for example, again, for any of you who haven't heard his vocals, just like with any of the these vocalists, I'll give an example. Listen to the song. Listen to the top track of their first album, "See You in Hell," and you'll know what I mean when you'll know what I mean about when he knows when to do those high vocals and when not to. But yeah, just a really great metal vocalist and extremely underrated. Mainly because the band themselves is sort of forgotten about, but again, awesome vocalist. Definitely someone who should not be looked over just because the band is sort of, is not really known that well. But yeah, Steve Grimmett is at number 2. Number 1 is Paul Diano. Yeah. Oh my god, I always sort of get a little bit agitated when people say, "Oh, Paul Diano has no vocal, no vocal ability whatsoever." Yeah, there's people like that. Like a lot of people say that, especially like people who are super fans of Bruce Dickinson. Now, I'm a fan of Bruce Dickinson, but I'm also a fan of Paul Diano. Now I'm not just going to talk about the stuff that Paul Diano did in Iron Maiden. Which most people just sort of look at instead of looking at basically his entire discography of everything he's been in. Paul Diano was a completely different style of vocalist compared to Bruce Dickinson in terms of Iron Maiden vocalist. Well, Bruce Dickinson has more of the operatic style of vocals for the most part. Paul Diano in Maiden, he sort of had that more of a punk rock fused heavy metal type vocals. Sort of the more rough kind of vocals, and those are really, really good. And I hate when people compare him to Bruce Dickinson because there's completely different types of vocals. But yeah, so a lot of people look over his vocals. A lot of people just sort of ignore the Paul Diano stuff, or just flat out just continuously, like, purposely just hate on it because, again, not Bruce Dickinson, so hate, and then there's those idiots who say, "Oh, Paul Diano," like, I mean, I could understand that people who are like oh, well, Paul Diano, I prefer Bruce Dickinson. That's fine. But then there's these idiots who like, oh, Paul Diano has no vocal ability, like no vocal talent. Like he's just sort of shouting blah blah blah. And I don't know if these people have even listened to anything other than like maybe one Paul Diano era Maiden song and nothing else. Like, listen to the other songs, and then also listen to everything else he's done. Besides the Iron Maiden stuff. Um, like songs from like the Battlezone albums, or maybe even God Magog. Again, I love that EP, the I Will Be There EP. Awesome. But yeah, he's just an extremely underrated vocalist. Again, those stupid people out there who are like, oh, well, he's not the most popular singer, so therefore we don't care. You know. Um, but yeah, he's just an amazing vocalist and one that should not be just sort of ignored. Um, but yeah, so that's about it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.